also known as World Peace Day, is officially observed annually on 21st September across the world. It is a day set aside for all humanity to commit to peace above all differences and to contribute to building a culture of peace. And so today, we are joining the United Nations and other member countries to commemorate Peace Day. And the 2022 theme for the International Day of Peace is End Racism, Build Peace. According to the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, he said, and I quote, "Racism continues to poison institutions, social structures, and everyday life in every society. It continues to be a driver of persistent inequality, and it continues to deny people their fundamental human rights. It destabilizes societies, undermines democracies, it erodes the legitimacy of governments, and the linkages between racism and gender equality are unmistakable." So this goes to say that as individuals, we all have a role to play in fostering peace, and tackling racism is a crucial way for us to contribute to peace. And today's discussion with the panel of experts on racism and building peace is one way we are propagating the message of building a culture of peace to the world. This event is being organized by the convener, the Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies, Jagils, in collaboration with the Academy of African Scholars for Social Change, the Jagils Inspires Alumni Network, the Global Diplomatic Council, African Girls Hope Foundation, African International Humanitarian Law Initiative, West Africa Center for Peace Studies, Leadership, Empowerment, and Development Innovation Initiative Africa, Leading Africa, Nigeria, Youth Impact Network, Ghana, Justice, Development, and Peace Commission, Center for Active Citizenship and Leadership, and Health, Justice, Development, and Peace Commission. We look forward to an insightful discussion from our distinguished expert panel. So to officially begin this program, I will be inviting the Executive Director of the Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies, Ambassador Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey, to give us the welcome and opening remark.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chichi. It's always a pleasure to see you, and I am so excited to see all my friends from around the world who have joined us today to celebrate this important program. As the Executive Director of the Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies, it's a pleasure to welcome all of you to this platform. We pride ourselves by celebrating all the most relevant and aligned United Nations mandated programs and activities as part of our core mission to bring global awareness for the world to appreciate and understand that togetherness we are able to achieve a lot. As an institution, the United Nations International Day of Peace is a remarkable event on our calendar because we believe that togetherness we are able to appreciate the work of this institution and to bring global peace to the world. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter which part of the world you are located. It doesn't matter what you do in life. Without peace, there is absolutely confusion. And we challenge each and everyone associated with our institute to have the mindset and appreciation of peace at all times. Therefore, this important program also marks another milestone of our institution. Since the inception of this institution, each year we have celebrated the United Nations International Day of Peace. But for today's program in particular, just as Chichi had mentioned, the global focus is on end racism and building peace. It therefore gives me joy and pleasure that we have paraded experts in different fields of endeavors. We have peace and conflict analysts. We have human rights advocates. We have women and gender advocates. We have entrepreneurs. We all manner of individuals on this platform today to discuss this all important idea of ending racism and building peace. And so without wasting much time, I want to thank all of you for finding time this Saturday to show up and for us to celebrate this moment together. I am once again excited and I look forward for a pleasant and a beautiful discussions as we move forward with all this. Thank you so much. Over to you, Chichi.
Thank you, Ambassador Samuel Jacobs-Abbey, for that wonderful speech. Okay. We all have a role to play in fostering peace, like I earlier said. And every September 21, and even every day, it is expected we show our commitment to fostering peace. And this can be done in simple ways. There are various ways which we can show how much we love one another and show how much we can achieve peace. We can organize Peace Day activities just like we're doing today in our various communities around the world. We can even teach peace education to students, to youths, and various groups of persons. And we can have music, competitions, art programs, even soccer and play football matches, just to express our need to keep the peace and to spread the culture of peace. So at this point, we will be watching a short video that portrays what we are talking about. In that video, we would be having some of us sending our peace messages across the world and talking about how to end racism by building peace.
Hello, welcome to Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies, a research, teaching, training, and leadership institute that critically provides strategic transformational thinking to leaders and students with the opportunity to develop and create lasting impact in their institutions. Championed by a world-class faculty, one-on-one executive coaching, and peer learning, our programs are offered both online and in cohort sessions. Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies partners with academic institutions, civil society organizations, local communities looking to accelerate the impact of their leaders, more effectively engage teams, and build inclusive cultures of employee engagement and performance. We offer courses such as certificate, diploma, and advanced diploma in counseling psychology, marriage counseling, applied psychology, child mental health, conflict and peace studies, international human rights law, security and governance, and in gender studies. For enrollment, email enroll@jaglobalinstitute.org or visit us online at jaglobalinstitute.org.
Kwame.
Thank you.
From Togo. We end racism by promoting social inclusion, and we build peace by promoting social engagement.
My name is Rufus. We end racism by recognizing prejudice, stereotypes, and discrimination in our society. And we build peace by loving everyone unconditionally. Thank you.
According to Mahatma Gandhi, our ability to reach unity will be the beauty and test of our civilization. Hence, the need to build peaceful relations. We build peace by promoting inclusion and embracing our diversity. So let's promote love and equality and end racism. How did you feel while watching this video? I'd like to hear from everyone. If you would like to talk, you just raise your hand and you'll be asked to unmute. And if you would like to send it to the chat, you can just type in one word or in one sentence what you felt after watching the video about Peace Day. Do we have anyone that would like to say something? Okay. For me, watching everyone talk about how they feel. Okay, we have a hand up there. Ma'am Ntombizodwa, please unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. My name is Ntombizodwa Msani, and I'm all the way from South Africa. And it's a good afternoon from myself to you guys, wherever you might be in the world. And I'll be discussing a bit more about what South Africa and Africa is dealing with in relation to, obviously, the topic of the day, which is end racism and build peace. But in answering your question, Chichi, I believe that it just helps us to reflect on the current issues that we have and what we still need to work on as a people, beyond just the skin color and the ideologies of what or who is better than the next person. So I'll keep it short and sweet for now, and I'll come back to have a more in-depth discussion as you ask those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful expression of what you thought. Yes, like you said, it helps us to reflect and the need for us to work more on the people. So achieving peace actually is our individual and collective responsibility. Thank you very much for that contribution. So very quickly, we will move on to the next item on the agenda. And at this moment, we will be welcoming our guest keynote speaker. And to welcome our keynote speaker, I will be inviting the president of the Jagils-Inspires Alumni Network, Ama Potse, to welcome and introduce our keynote guest speaker.
Hello, everybody, and good morning from my end. I'm in the United States, so good morning to everyone. And thank you for making the time to be here this morning for this very important topic and discussion that we're going to be engaging in. This morning, I am privileged to introduce our guest speaker in the person of Mr. Migyikra Ndemole. So I'll read a bit of his profile and then we will invite him to speak to us. So Mr. Migyikra Ndemole is an international civil servant, solicitor, and barrister at law, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. He's a social worker, the founder of the executive director of the West Africa Center for Peace Studies, which is found in Ghana. He currently works as a child protection advisor with the United Nations mission in South Sudan. Since February 2012, he has been working on issues related to children in armed conflict in the oil-rich Unity State with Greater Bahr el Ghazal area. Prior to this, he worked as a human rights officer with the United Nations mission in Sudan, both in Niala, Darfur, and Wau. In the south, what was then the semi-autonomous region of South Sudan from March 2005 until February 2011. He has 10 years working experience with the Commission of Human Rights and Administrative Justice in his home country, Ghana, as an investigator from 1994 through 2004. In 2011, he taught a variety of courses in international studies in Kenyatta University, both from human rights and humanitarian gender issues in Africa. Prior to all of this, his achievements are as follows. He has a master's in crime science, investigation and intelligence university from the University of Portsmouth in the United Kingdom. He has a master's in laws in international crime and justice, which is an international criminal law, from Migyikra University of Turin, Italy. He has a master's in peace and conflict studies from European University Center for Peace Studies, found in Australia. He has a master's in laws in international human rights and humanitarian law from European University Viadrien, for Germany. And he also has a bachelor's degree in graduate diploma in law from the Nottingham Law School, Nottingham Trent University, United Kingdom. He also has the diploma in social work administration from University of Ghana. Having completed Kenya School of Law with a postgraduate diploma in legal practice, he was gazetted and called to the bar as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a member of Law Society. Well, as we can see, Mr. Ndemole is heavily loaded and is very much the right person to speak to us this morning. And so it is my privilege to invite to speak to us this morning, Mr. Migyikra Ndemole. You are welcome, sir. Please, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. Good afternoon, colleagues. As rightly said, my name is Erasmus Migyikra, a Ghanaian and then a Kenyan lawyer. It's not common, but it has happened. Yeah, and the founder of West African Center for Peace Studies. I'm so grateful to invite me this good afternoon as a keynote speaker on this great day. And what I would say is that I was lucky to have a lecturer once who is the founder of discipline peace studies called Johan Galton. So on this note, today is an important day, which is the UN Day. And as an international civil servant, I'm so grateful. I've been selected by Dr. Abbey to be the keynote speaker. So let me take it from here. The UN Day of Peace is an important occasion dedicated to the strengthening the ideals of peace. Its purpose is to provide a global shared day for humanity, to commit to peace above all differences, and to contribute to peace building, a culture of peace. At a time when war and violence often monopolize our news cycles, the International Day of Peace is an inspiring reminder of what we can create together. And what is it? It's peace. This year's theme, End Racism, Build Peace, highlights a canker that has eaten deeply into our society. It is also a reminder for us all to advocate to dismantle the structure that entrenches racism and racial discrimination in our midst towards fostering peace. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights in Article 1 and 2 proclaim that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, that everyone is entitled to all rights, freedom set out in the Declaration, without distinction of any kind, in particular as to race, color, or national origin. In 1965, the international community adopted a convention by which they committed to eliminate all forms of racial discrimination. That convention is now nearly universal ratified. That means it has been ratified the whole world almost. However, racism has remained prevalent, both overt and covert. What do I mean by overt or covert? It can be either open or closed. That's what we see of late. You don't see the racism straightforward. Some covers it, others open it. It is undeniable that in this 21st century, racism and racial discrimination still permeate societies around the world and deeply affect the lives and human rights of millions of people, including Africans and people of African descent, Asians and people of Asian descent, indigenous people, migrants, national, ethnic, and linguistic minorities, as well as religious communities. African people and people of African descent have particularly been marginalized as part of the legacy of slavery and colonialism. Racism and racial discrimination have also caused us to be held back in many aspects of public life. While there has been some progress in the fight against these minors, the situation persists in many parts of the world, albeit in various degrees. It is good to know that powerful global movements against racism are shifting the status quo. For instance, in 2020, a wave of worldwide protests against racism and racial discrimination ensued, prompted by the killing of George Floyd. The Black Lives Matter protests catalyzed change in countries around the world. In some countries, there is now a broader acknowledgement of systemic nature of racism that affects the lives of Africans and people of African descent, and need to address this. Nevertheless, more needs to be done if we are going to end racism in public and then build peace. We are surrounded by stories of racism, even if we don't see them. Racism is everywhere, in our streets, in our workplace, and at times, even in our institutions, and which I think most of you might be experiencing in your various institutions. Sometimes it is within us, in the way we think, even if we don't realize it. So sometimes people don't even realize it's racism, but our actions tell. So racism has pernicious effect on many different groups of people globally. Some of the notable consequences include social inequality and diversion, genocide, slavery, or apartheid. Racism harms not just the lives of those who endure it, but also the whole society. The fight against racism is everyone's fight, you and me. We all have a part to play, hence need to advocate and fight to end racism or racial discrimination. It is more important than ever today to promote peace, open-mindedness for acceptance across gender, race, and territories, especially in Africa and other places facing conflict and instability. Why is peace so important? Because the implications of conflict are far-reaching. The majority of dislocated youth, asylum seekers who are endangering their lives in other countries and through perilous routes is a result of the instabilities and violence that are taking place in their respective nations. It is our moral and social responsibility to respond passionately to the urgent needs of conflict victims. A strategic peace-building process focused on what can be done at source. Collective efforts are required over a long period of time to assist people dealing with the root causes and promoters of conflict. It is known that military answers, excuse me, it is known that military answers alone to political problem doesn't work. Dialogue and diplomacy has been more effective in building conflict, conflict prevention instead of the deployment of military in a conflict zone. So I know most people who are related to Jacobs-Abbey Institute are diplomats. So you have a lot of role to play in this sense. The army may be fully engaged to prevent or defend against an imminent danger, but in reality, it cannot find a lasting solution to problems that are more political, social, and economic in nature. Because conflict destroys lives and slows down development, one of the consequences of war is that destruction and disruption of human life and activities, which brings about many changes. Sustainable development can only take place in an atmosphere of continued tranquility and stability. As UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said, racism continues to poison institutions, social structures, and everyday life in every society. It continues to be a driver of persistent inequality, and it continues to deny people their fundamental human rights. There is no justification for racial discrimination. We cannot boast to have peace if we continue to see instances of discrimination. We need to create a world in which all people are treated equally by any racism which is present in our society. Today, I entreat us all to join the effort of the United Nations to work towards a world free of racism and racial discrimination. A world where we treat people with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, ideology, or religion. A world beyond racism. All of us need to call out openly and condemn all messages which incite racism, racial discrimination, and related intolerance. Let us work together, my fellow sisters and brothers, to end racism and build peace to the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Indeed, like you said, let us all work together to end racism and build peace in the world, because building peace is a collective responsibility. Thank you once again. Right now, we will be going straight into the panel discussion, and we'll also have the opportunity to learn and get more inspiration from your wealth of experience as you also join us in the panel discussion. And to introduce the panelists, I will be calling on Priscilla Owari. Priscilla is an alumni of Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute of Leadership Studies, and she's also part of the planning team of this event today. Priscilla, over to you. Priscilla?
HTC, I don't see her yet, so you want to go ahead because of the time?
Okay, it appears Priscilla is not here. Okay, I'll go ahead and with the profile of our panelists. Our first panelist is Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey. Ambassador Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey. He was appointed as the Global Diplomatic Council Special Envoy to the United Nations and African Union. Prior to his appointment, Ambassador Dr. Jacobs-Abbey serves as the Executive Director of the Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies. He previously served as Director of International Center for Conflict and Human Rights and Programs Director for Sub-Saharan Africa for Youth Human Rights International. His passion for gender equality and the protection of children has been evident throughout his career, especially in his contribution to the passage of Domestic Violence Acts and the Human Trafficking Act, as well as ratification of related conventions at the level of the African Union and the United Nations. Ambassador Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey is revered for his leadership on global public health diplomacy and strategic leadership. In addition to his diplomatic services, Ambassador Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey has had a long career in international development. He has served as a consultant for Youth for Human Rights International, UNICEF, UNESCO, UNDP, UNV, Children of the Earth, One Humanity Institute, Junior Chamber International, among others. He was the chairman of the Board of Trustees for African Girls Hope Foundation. He was a senior technical advisor for Girls Excellence Movement, a US-based nonprofit organization leading the effort in empowering girls across the globe. He served as the chairman of the Board of Directors for African Hope Girls Foundation. Ambassador Dr. Jacobs-Abbey was an Institute of Cooperative Studies fellow at University of Connecticut, where he studied international human rights, leadership, and conflict resolution. He is a recipient of prestigious Mahatma Gandhi Leadership Award for Social Good by Lanka Achievers Foundation, aimed at honoring and popularizing the social good impact of thousands of individuals and organizations making social change impact. He is respected and known for his extensive charitable work and contributions to the community. And over the course of his career, he has served on various commissions for promoting health and well-being, reducing poverty, promoting economic development, and reforming leadership. Ambassador Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey is a graduate of Donald R. Tapia School of Business at St. Leo University, where he obtained MBA in Healthcare Management and Business Analytics. He holds a PhD in Health Services with a special concentration in Public Health Policy from College of Health Science, Walden University. He obtained his associate degree and Bachelor of Science degree in Healthcare Administration and Management from Broad Global University. He is a Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, Patient Quality and Safety Training. He is a professional development training in resilience of local government, a multi-sectoral approach to integrate public health and disaster risk management from the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITA. He was amongst the first batch of the World Health Organization training operational planning guidelines and COVID-19 partners platform to support country and the local government preparedness and response. As an adjunct ambassador, Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey has provided organizational leadership plans and implemented strategic training and development opportunities globally, and utilizes experimental learning, video, and synchronous virtual learning methodologies to deliver product-specific training and spearheaded instructor-led training through the utilization of different LMs, Oracle, Blackboard, Canvas, Adobe. He is passionate about training and education. And he created the Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies to help students nurture skills and knowledge. Ambassador Dr. Jacobs-Abbey, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Our next panelist would be Dr. Grace Faraja Bantu. She is the founder and the CEO of African Girls Hope Foundation, a US-based charitable organization with a mission to empower, equip, and provide access to formal and high quality education for underprivileged age girls in sub-Saharan Africa. Dr. Bantu is originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and she holds a PhD in Human and Social Services with emphasis in Global Human Services from the College of Behavioral Sciences at Walden University. She also holds a master's degree in Organizational Management from Ashford University and a bachelor's degree in Accounting with a minor focus in Economics from Daystar University. She's married to Mr. Dennis Uraho, and they have been blessed with 3 beautiful girls, Deborah, Elsa, Neza, and Nella. She has a wealth of global experiences, mostly in the areas of empowering women and girls. Her research area is focused on the experiences of refugee women with different physical abilities in Kenya. She has traveled extensively to spearhead community engagement in the East and Central African countries and beyond. Over the years, she has received multiple international recognitions, including the 2014 Refugee Voice and Dr. Nina Mayhop Leadership Award 2019 for outstanding dedication to bring social change and devotion to fight poverty and injustice. She is an educator, entrepreneur, a mentor, and an advocate. Dr. Faraja Grace Bantu joins the Jacobs-Abbey Global University as a faculty member, as a professor of women leadership. Dr. Grace, you're very much welcome.
Thank you so much.
And next on our panel list is Ms. Ntombi Zodwa Nsane. She is a human rights lawyer and founder and director of African International Humanitarian Law Initiative. And she is a well-read scholar and a graduate of University of Victoria, Center for Human Rights, and the University of South Africa. Ms. Ntombi Zodwa Nsane has a long history of model UN participants and the Young African Leadership Initiative Program, YALI. She was the commencement speaker at the School of Diplomacy and Governance graduation class of 2022 at the Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies. Welcome, Ms. Ntombi Zodwa Nsane.
Thank you.
I want to officially welcome all our panelists for honoring this event. And so very quickly, we'll be going straight into the panel discussion. And to moderate this session with me, I will be calling on Otumba Olofi Isaac, who is also an alumni, to join me in moderating the panel session. Otumba Olofi, welcome. Kindly indicate if you're here with us. Okay, I'll quickly go ahead if it's not here. I guess it's network. And so, going straight into the panel discussion, I will be posing questions to the panelists. The panelists who have 10 minutes each to answer the questions accordingly. And so the first question will be going to Ambassador Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey. The first question goes thus: to what extent would you attribute racism in modern society to racial mythologies? And how does race and ethnicity affect our society today?
Well, thank you very much, Chichi, for this important question in terms of the mythology as pertain to race and how to build peace. I must say that sociology teaches us that we are coexisting inhabitants. Therefore, we will continue to have differentials in our way of upbringing and in the way we do things. People become a little more skeptical and become more racially inclined depending on the environments in which they grew up. Sometimes it may interest you to realize that our society is so polarized in such a way, a manner that we tend to toe a certain racial divide without necessarily even know the reason why we are doing that. It is because of the myth that existed that there is a class of people and a different group of people. But one thing I always like to bring to the discussion is the understanding that as individuals, we must always keep it at the back of our mind that we are one people, irrespective of our skin color, irrespective of our gender, irrespective of the kind of job we do, irrespective of everything that we do, we are one people. And how do we know that we are one people? Just get to understand that when we take off the color of our skin and we pinch ourselves, you're not going to see green blood or yellow blood or white blood. You're going to see red blood. That goes to underscore the fact that we are one people with a dignity and pride. And therefore, in order for us to be able to appreciate and understand why all this has become an issue, it is primarily humans' own creations. You see, humanity is such that when power and authority is given to us, we stand the opportunity to abuse the opportunity and to use that same system as a medium of control. And so you will come to the realization that this issue of racism is it's a long traditional thing that stems back to the early centuries about the perception and understanding of people's behavior and their thinking process and their environmental growth. But the truth of the matter is that irrespective of the feeling, irrespective of the perception, irrespective of the learning, we ought to come to that realization that we are each created according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We are each created with dignity. We are each created with pride. We are each given the opportunity under the sun to live a life worthy of appreciating. And so as soon as we begin to see ourselves as more important than others, then the systemic ideology of racism begins to stem in our mind. And everything starts from the mindset, because the way we perceive our mind determines how we approach situations at our disposals. I understand, and we can argue or we can use academics to underscore the fact that this racism ideology and mythologies have existed for a long time. We recall the likes of Martin Luther King. We recall the likes of the music legend Bob Marley. We recall the likes of Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, and all the John Lewis, and all the people who stood against segregations and racism across the globe. For me, what matters most is not where it stems from, but how can we stop it? And how can we, in our own small world, prove that we can make a difference? And we can only do that when we reorient our mind, when we begin to appreciate the fact that we are all equal before the law. And once we come to that realization that we are all equal before the law, we will treat each individual with dignity and pride. And once we treat people with dignity and pride, just as the golden rule says, do unto others what you want others to do unto you. And so if you see another person different from you, then you will begin to develop that stereotype mindset. But as soon as you begin to recognize and realize that we are one human, and therefore we ought to respect people and give them their space and their place in life, we will then stop all forms of racism and build a culture of togetherness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Jacobs, for those wonderful insights. The next question will be going to our distinguished keynote speaker. My apologies for not mentioning him amongst the panelists earlier on. The question is for Mr. Erasmus Ndemole Migyikra, who will be joining us on the panel. Sir, this question goes to you. As a child protection expert, what are the possible effects of racial discrimination on children, and how do we combat racial prejudice, most particularly how parents influence the formation of bias in their children?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Please repeat your question because my network was giving me a problem to hear you. Hello?
Sure, Chichi, if you can repeat the question.
Okay, sorry, I'll repeat the question again. I said, as a child protection expert, what are the possible effects of racial discrimination on children? And how do we combat racial prejudice, most particularly how parents influence the formation of bias in their children?
Thank you. Is it correct? Is the name correct, Chichi?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. Racial discrimination has many diverse effects on children, especially in their formative years. Children who grow in racial hostile environment unconsciously embeds the tendency as a way of life. They are likely going to exhibit those negative traits as form of self-defense and protection. Parents must consciously instill the values of inclusiveness, peaceful cohabitation, and non-discrimination into their children from childhood into adulthood constantly. And this is very important because children, this is where the psychology will tell you that there is nurturing and nature that build up a child. So if you are nurturing a child and you don't instill all this into that child, then to be honest, that is going to be a problem because that child will always have this self-defense and he will fight back usually in all situations. And what they also hear from adults is what sometimes they take it over. So if a parent sit down and start saying, I hate racism, and so I hate this religion, I hate this particular person, the children, as you are nurturing them, they are picking all those things up. So parents have to also be very, very careful the way we educate our children against some of those things. Because after all, we all have the same blood. If they cut, whether he's a Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, whether he's a white, black, whether it's yellow. So I think we need to give our children and the upcoming ones a good education and culture which will enable them enable them also grow in that and be able to respect the rights and dignity of others in terms of racism and other things that bring discrimination into society. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insights on that question about how parents can consciously nurture their children so that they can be better groomed to adopt inclusion of everyone. Thank you. And so I'll go back to Dr. Jacobs-Abbey. The last question for you would be, within organizations, it is a common knowledge that racial inequity is often perpetrated by supervisors, managers, and senior leaders within. What would be your recommendation or your perspective on how to promote racial equity in the workplace?
Well, that's a very good question, and this is something that happens all over the world, irrespective of where you live in the world. Sometimes when we talk about racial challenges, people just focus on color. It's not necessarily about color. We can all be black or we can all be white, and it can still be a racial differences within us. Now, as a leader, as a supervisor, as a manager, as a director, as an executive of an institution, it is your responsibility to ensure, first and foremost, to develop the culture of togetherness and inclusiveness in your leadership approach and leadership style. As I alluded in my earlier submission, you only become the best of a leader when your mindset is reoriented to understand and appreciate that it doesn't matter whether Amma is a woman or whether Isaac is a man. What matters most is that we are individuals with different strengths and weaknesses, and our ability to focus on our strength to build a better world for the people around us. And so what leaders and supervisors ought to do is, first of all, to acquire skills and knowledge. It's very important, skills building, knowledge, understanding, because most people react to situations based on what they know. And so if you are ignorant of the fact that inclusiveness is important in organizational growth and diversity, you will not see the relevance of including different cultures and different backgrounds and different understanding into some of this work. But if you are very parochial, you will even become the defense wall to have inclusion and diversity in this part of this discussion. Now, quickly, I will say this. I was having a conversation with a friend just yesterday at the ongoing UN General Assembly. And so there was a conversation on the side, and this individual asked me, what is my perspective about gays and lesbianisms in the workplace? Why is it that the world is giving them so much room to operate in this world than before? And so he was asking about my perspective. My answer to this individual was that, well, inclusive and diversity has nothing to do with religion, has nothing to do with your faith. It's about promoting the goodness of everyone. What people choose to do with their life, it's their responsibility, leave that with them. Just focus on building a solid environment where everyone feels appreciated. Because the last time I checked, when I flew from Ghana to the United States or from Joburg to the States, I never care about who the pilot was and what the pilot background was. Or the last time I was sick and I was in the hospital, I never pay attention to whether the doctor who was taking care of me was gay or not. None of those matters to me. At that particular point in life, I want to be well. I want to get out of the hospital. I want to have a decent life and walk away. Why is it that it matters to me when it comes to my consciousness? But when I am in dire need of help, it doesn't matter to me. That tells you how the human brain works and how we justify things just to achieve our own selfishness. And so I will say to your question, Chichi, that first of all, leaders ought to have a deeper understanding and reorientations of their mind, and they must make a conscious effort to include diversity in all aspects of their work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting response. When you talk about inclusion and diversity, it actually resonates with me because that is part of my advocacy, and I believe that should be part of everybody's advocacy to ensure that we practice inclusion and diversity within our environment. Thank you once again. And so quickly, I will go back to Mr. Erasmus Ndemole. The next question for you would be, the definition of racial profiling focuses on the notion that a person's or organization's actions are motivated by safety, security, or public protection. But there is a gray zone when talking about racial profiling. It is evident that real and perceived racial profiling can diminish people's trust in institutions. What is your opinion on this? And how can the justice system structurally address this anomaly of systemic racial profiling and discrimination?
Thank you, Gigi. Racial profiling is not only limited to security agencies in their screening or perception of people that they come into contact with. Racial profiling, which is sometimes called ethnic profiling, is an act of misinterpretation, mistrust, unfounded suspicion or discrimination against a person or group of people on the basis of their race, religion, or nationality. It could also be ethnic background, rather than individual available evidence. You know, in law, evidence is very important, but now people use their own perceptions, or they just look at you and decide as such. It's like a typical example I can give you was when I was once traveling from Berlin to Munich, and the bus stopped in the middle of the way. And almost everybody in the bus, I was the only black, almost everybody in the bus was standing a long queue, smoking. From nowhere, police pop up like 100 meters away, coming towards the bus. They met about 10 to 15 people. They never said anything to anyone, but they came straight to me. I should prove my documents. This perception, they thought probably this African boy here is here as a refugee. So they came to me direct. And it turned to be argument between us. Why did you leave others and come? So this is some of the things. So what I want you to understand is that perceptions, misinterpretation, mistrust is what usually lead to this kind of things. So the individual or communities rely on legitimate institutions for justice and restoration. But when these institutions are rightly or wrongly perceived to be biased, that the reliability on this institution reduced drastically. It is duty of the institution to send out a clear signal or assurance of their neutrality and their impartiality to everyone, irrespective of race, gender, or social status. And you ask, how can the justice system or structure address the anomalies? The justice system must have a clear definition and systematic approach to resolving or administering fair and free justice to all manner of people, without any perceived favoritism towards any group of people or at expense of the other. It must be justified all the time of whatever a judicial official would do, and not to see that because somebody is black, somebody is white, So I should judge, or somebody belong to a sect group or a particular group, I should favor the person. No, it should be natural justice. It should be followed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And so we will be moving ahead to the next panelist. And to take this session, I will be handing over to Otumba Olofi Isaac. I think I saw him online. Otumba Olofi, are you back? Okay, I think I'll just go ahead. Okay, the next question would be for Ms. Ntombi Zodwa Nsano. What will you say are the existing experiences of racial discrimination in Africa at large, drawing examples from the South African experience?
Good afternoon again, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Please note that I'll be experiencing load shedding in the next 40 minutes or so. So if there are any questions that I'm not able to answer, please excuse me. But in answering your question, I think the primary factors of racial discrimination, how I would like to unpack it, is firstly by reading this beautiful definition of racism, which was given by the Ontario Human Rights Commission, rather. And it was explaining racism to me, it is a belief. So, well, in my interpretation, it is the notion, the misconceived notion that another set of a group of people are superior to the next, right? And how racial discrimination, they define it, is by explaining how that belief is then instituted into action that is illegal and then imposing limitations on the next person or group of people by formulating systematic discrimination based on whether it is their sex, whether it's the ethnicity, whether it's the factor of their religion, or things that are related to something another person will not perceive ideal for themselves. And now, from the broader scope of the African continent in itself, we have seen so many instances where even has already been touched on, where we know that sexism is an issue, xenophobia is an issue. We know that these issues that are hate crimes are an issue, hate speech. And we are understanding that these issues have been propelling over the years. But the primary issue that we also understand is that racism bores at the deep focal point of this. And now racism, as defined as a feeling, becomes a problematic situation, in a sense that if we are governed by how we feel, and that is how we are approaching other people in principle, by imposing our notions, or maybe looking back at the foundation of how we grew up and how our environment critically played a significant role in our perceptions, in our values, in our principles, as well as how we approach and build relationships with the next person. And now that perception being placed on whether I was exposed to seeing different ethnicities in my upbringing, whether I was exposed to the factors of I'm able to speak a different language as opposed to somebody else. And so we're looking at the foundational issues, as our former speakers have rightfully said. You're building children. When you're raising children up, it is so critical to build a very solid foundation in how they see themselves and how they approach life, because they are not going to grow and live in isolation. In essence, as people, we grow to build with each other. So that is something that we really need to keep at the focal point of who we are, by ensuring that how we impart the wisdom, the knowledge that we have experienced, that we have come to identify as a problem, looking at racial discrimination as a focal point, is that we are responsible as the adults of today to ensure that we speak to these issues, we identify them, we assess them, we unpack them, and we are unapologetic about how we speak on these principles. The reason I say that is because we're seeing that, especially from the South African point of view. Historically, you would hear people speak about apartheid. And I'm someone who came from the cusp of going from the apartheid regime coming into democracy. And I'm a product of the transition in a sense that I'm able to articulate myself because I went to a Model C school. I am able to go into different spheres of livelihoods, meaning I can go from a suburb, I can go from a township, I can even go to the rural areas and be able to adapt in all those different spheres. So what does that mean? What does that translate when we speak about how you are supposed to change up in every circumstance or situation that you get into? Obviously, I grew up going to a Model C school, being a minority, meaning that I was one of at least 50 Black students in a school of more than 1,000 white children. And what that translates to somebody else is that it is a very challenging situation to grow up under, because firstly, you are being taught a more Western type of system of how to act, how to approach life, how to articulate yourself. And then when you transition into going home, you're having to now be African and how that translates to you, and also upholding the values and the principles in your household. And now when we look at the principle of racial discrimination in its sense, is that if we look at the core values of an individual and we look at the issues at the rationality of it, we understand that there are systematic situations that make it challenging for us to adapt, for us to translate, for us to be adaptable and to be relatable to each other. And so when we come to an African point of view, we know that fellow African brothers and sisters have had the issue of Francophone and Anglophone speaking individuals being in conflict with each other, and that translating into a language barrier, that translating into ethnicity issues, that translating into my culture supersedes your culture, or my language supersedes your language, because of how I identify with what my upbringing, with how I understand the principle of what I've been taught, how I've been taught to think, how I've been taught to relate to the next person. And so those issues accumulate to a system of how we as a people are to be able not only to see what we've only been exposed to, but to have a broader understanding that in our diversity, we should be able to translate and defeat this notion of racism, which is what? A feeling of superiority over another person, a feeling that my culture, my identity, my ability to be who I am translates to being superior to a next person, instead of embracing one another, instead of learning from each other, instead of being able to say, oh, because I am Zulu, or because a very interesting factor I'll mention in passing, my parents, I'm a South African hybrid, meaning my mother is Setswana and my father is Zulu, and I am a product of two cultures in South Africa. So it means that me being who I am finding myself to have the Nguni side, and I'm having to find myself with the Tswana side. So in translating that, there are so many kids who are finding themselves also in the similar position, where their mother is another ethnicity, a father another ethnicity, and then you're finding yourself in the middle of all of that. And how do you then translate and unpack who you are as a person? How do you identify? Do you identify with your mother's side of the family, or do you identify with your father's side of the family? How do you now battle with identification of self, knowing of self, translating that, right? And so we look at these principles, and I'll speak just of myself before I get back to this topic. We look at these principles on saying, our thinking then speaks to how were you raised in your household? I speak Setswana, my father speaks Zulu. In a normal South African setting, it is uncommon. Imagine somebody's from Afghanistan. The mother is probably Chinese, the father is from Afghan. What are the natures and dynamics of that child in that particular household? Look at Africans. We come from so many different, beautiful ethnic backgrounds. Why don't we embrace each other? And in embracing each other, we find the dynamical challenges of us. If we love each other and we come from different ethnicical backgrounds, we are then not only opposed outside by our families, by our friends, by those that do not understand what we're trying to do, because we speak of love that sees beyond color, ethnicity, language, sex. I mean, we see all these things and we speak about them from a point of how do we relate to each other beyond the things that we are limited by, right? And then we see these, how do we uproot these things? We should now move beyond a feeling of I'm better than you. We should move away from that and start to speak of racial discrimination is no longer a subject that we can just gloss over. We need to start breaking it down. In South Africa in particular, we are knowing that we have a racism issue. It's a big issue. Why? Because in my personal opinion, when the transition was happening, even though I was very young at the time, when it was happening, what did not happen was people taking accountability for their hatefulness, which is that feeling. That's what we define it, right? A feeling is whether it be love, whether it be hate. They did not take accountability for their hatefulness, for our color, for who we were, for our identity. They then broke us down as Africans, segregated us, put us in one community, but sectioned us, making it what? Now we're identifying with, I'm Zulu, you're Tswana, we can't relate. We speak a different language. We are now what? Broken down. What can we not do? Unify. What is that? A problem in society where we need to what? Come in solidarity to build a better world, better Africa, better South Africa. This is the same thing that has happened in Africa. We've seen the breaking down of systems, how the legacy from apartheid colonialism has transpired and come and infiltrated us in ways that we can't even start to fathom. We are still feeling the aftermath of the history of what we have been burdened to unresolved. Even when we sit here today, we are hopeful that even in the discussions, it will translate into actions so that even me, when I speak to white counterparts in South Africa, we will be able to speak without that burden of feeling coming up where it transpires into hatred and then translates into violence. It needs to come to a point as Africans, we are able to talk about our issues without anybody feeling that their opinion supersedes the next person's. So we need to come to an emotional intelligence where we are able to rationally speak out our issues as a people. And this translates globally as well. And so until we are able to do that, I really foresee challenges because in South Africa, we still have primary issues of racism. We still have people killing each other because with name calling, because their slurs, their jokes that are inappropriate. We still have people being treated like they are less than the next person. We still have these issues. We still have educational systems where it discriminates against the children of South Africa who do not look like the majority of children in the schools. It's a problem. And moving on into other African countries, we know that women are still being held back. Equity for women is required. We need that. Equality is something that needs not only be spoken about, but be practiced. I know that we are challenged because traditionalism is the one holding us back as a people, but we are understanding that in terms of modernization, we really need to start to transition. We really need to start to become empowered, enlightened as a nation, as a people, so that we have these conversations that are uncomfortable. We hold everyone accountable, whether it be a man or a woman, irrespective of color. We need to hold each other accountable. It is time that we not only talk about how are we going to start equally and equitably putting women in places of authority without this notion of having them being oppressed, without this notion of limiting their voices, without this notion of limiting their ability to articulate themselves. We are not less than, we are more than enough. We are more than powerful. And it is time that not only men in primary authority positions that are already doing their best to open the door for us, but it is time that all people realize it is important for change to start happening. And I think I'll leave it at that for now before I start to speak. Anyway. Thank you, Chichi.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ntombi Zodwa. You actually did justice to that question. And it is quite evident that racism is still deeply rooted in South Africa. And so this brings me to the next question. Currently in South Africa, what are the current measures being taken by all stakeholders, such as the government, the NGOs, community groups, and international institutions to address the issue of racial discrimination in South Africa?
I thank you, Chichi, for that question. In South Africa, there's the National Action Plan to combat racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerances. This is birthed by the United Nations World Conference Against Racism, which was held in South Africa, in Durban in particular, in 2001. And what this actionable plan does is that it speaks to the principle of what needs to happen and how do we bring all stakeholders, including civil society, academics, NGOs, people who are in prominent positions, well, the society in general, how do we bring them together to enforce change, to start having not just the conversation, but the actions that perpetuate that factor? And now, I'll be honest and say this. In South Africa, we are very good with policies and regulations and enforcing laws. We are very good at that. What we are challenged with, to a certain degree, is the enforcement, it's the monitoring and evaluation of these principles. So we write up beautiful documentations, we'll have policies, we'll have action plans. And sometimes it takes too long to enforce, and sometimes it doesn't actually transpire to action. It becomes a very beautiful document that we have, and it becomes a hypothetical ideal of, oh, this is what we would love to see happening. But the rationalization and just the unpacking of the plan is a bit of a challenge for us in South Africa. And that is deeply rooted in governance issues that we have in the country. And some of the aspects of it is also a leadership issue, and from the administrative point as well. But coming back to what we are doing as a nation is that we are not only having conversations online now because we are able to speak to everybody globally, and we are so blessed. I mean, Dr. Samuels has given us the opportunity to come and speak from different nations. We thank you. We thank you, Dr. Samuels, and we thank you for your administration and your leadership as well. And so we look at how in South Africa, we come together as a community. We speak about these issues, and it's just a pity I won't be able to go deeper into the context of xenophobia in the country, because I know it is a very contentious subject, especially from a South African point of view. Especially speaking to fellow Africans, it's important for us to contextualize what is the actual deeply rooted issues in South Africa when it comes to the subject of xenophobia. And it is not something that I can gloss over simply because it is something that I need to contextualize. The reason I say that is because it's a very sensitive issue. And so because we are fellow brethren and sisters, it is important for me to be able to unpack for you what is really the reality of what is happening in South Africa without me just saying that foreign nationals in the country are a problem. That is not the only reason or the rational reason behind what is actually happening or what is perpetuating xenophobia in the country. But I think I'll speak to Dr. Samuels and we'll have just that as a topic. I think he would love to unpack it. But going back to what we're doing, we're having community dialogues, we're having community engagements, we are speaking to the community at large about what can be done. We have the Human Rights Commission that is at the focal point, trying to speak to the communities about what can be done. What is the most rational and progressive way of dealing with these issues and subjects, not just from the country level, but how do we include international treaties into what we are trying to do in the country and transforming the notion of racism. But to be honest, from the domestic point of view of our country, we are able to administer some of the laws fully, and some people have made examples so that it is always borne in the back of others' minds that you are not above the law. You are in principle to be held accountable at all times. And because we are a constitutional country, a democratic country rather, led and governed by the Constitution itself, it is important for us to say that human rights in this country are critical, even though it seems that we are not able to articulate it fully in terms of the administration thereof. But we are at the focal point fighting for our people, fighting for those that are foreign nationals in the country, who are our fellow brothers. We are speaking up against injustices that we see on a day-to-day basis. We still have so many issues that we need to uncover and unpack. And in resolving these issues at the primary level, we have things that shouldn't be happening that are still happening in the year 2022. I mean, we've been in democracy, especially from the South African point of view, for more than about 25 to 30 years now. So it is important for us to start to see the transformation. Even though former President Thabo Mbeki, he did mention that it will probably take us an additional 80 to 100 years to start to see the actual transformation in the country. And I say it is impossible not to see this transformation in my lifetime. I implore it upon fellow Africans that we start to arise and not just use our voices as an instrument, but that we start to solidify these issues and start to nip it in the bud while we still can, while we still have the zeal and the empowerment to be able to speak to each other in a voice that can be unified. We have been shown that in life, we need each other. And it is true, we do. And we can do anything that we set our minds to. And in answering this question, I will leave it with this. I would like to say, in South Africa, we are on the ground, we are leading, we are governing, we are speaking, we are fighting. But most importantly, we are expressing ourselves and articulating ourselves with knowledge based on the history of our country, that we know that the challenges need to be alleviated, cannot be left with only the thought of hopelessness. We are the hope that needs to be realized. I don't know who we might be waiting for as Africans to come and change our countries. Wherever we are in this world, we must always impart back to our fellow countries where we come from. Even if it's my neighboring country, I must impart. And I must do my best to make sure that their lives are better, my life is better. Even if it's a challenge, even if sometimes it costs someone's life, we are willing and we are ready. Thank you.
Wow, powerful.
Thank you very much for those insights. Now I will be asking our next panelist, Dr. Grace Faraja, to put the band to the following questions. First question is, looking at the intersections between race and gender and how it affects development across all sectors. In your view, what has been the impact of racism on gender and in particular female immigrants?
Hello? Dr. Samuel, can you please repeat the question because I did not hear the question?
Sure.
Okay. Looking at the intersections between race and gender and how it affects development across all sectors. In your own view, what has been the impact?
Dr. Samuel, she's breaking, so she's breaking in between, so I can't hear all the sentence. If someone can repeat it clearly.
Sure. Let me repeat that for you if you can hear me. So the question that it's been asked, Dr. Grace, is, give me a second, let me move this from here so I can read that for you. So the question to you is, as looking at the intersections between race and gender and how it affects development across all sections. In your view, what has been the impact of racism on gender and in particular female immigrants?
Thank you so much. Good question. And Dr. Samuel, thank you for your leadership and your team. And before I go on, I just want to say that this topic of racism, a very uncomfortable topic in so many different places in our communities as African, especially here in this country. But I believe that at the beginning of being able to discuss on this topic is the beginning of change and transformation in our communities and in our different races that we are surrounded with. And, it's very uncomfortable to some extent, and because we know the reason why behind it, it's because as by the definition by itself from the Oxford, it's racism is when you see another person different from you and believing that maybe someone else's race is better than yours. So that's an identity crisis that has been there even with our immigrant communities, our children or young youth that we have been across with or helping in this community or in these areas where we are in. So we have seen it. We have seen this crisis. We have been involved in this crisis of identity crisis of not some of them they have been assimilated too much to a point that they are not even willing to accept who they are or where they come from. For example, especially the youth who are in colleges now they know how to speak good English. Now I'm speaking about the immigrants. Now they know how to express themselves like and they know all the different tonations here in this country, how the Southern they speak, and they can do that, but they do not want to accept their originality of where they come from, and that's a crisis. So our responsibilities as our leaders and scholars is to help them, remind them that it's okay to accept who you are. It's okay to accept what you believe in. You are original. Your originality is better than what you are trying to become. So in my point of view, we have a big responsibility as leaders. We have a big job as leaders to educate, to continually educate our youth, our communities, our children about this topic of racism and teaching them that they have to continue accepting the originality of where they come from, because that's what identifies them. There's no single way I will ever forget who I am. As an immigrant or as a former refugee, I will always be proud of who I am and where I come from. Reason why? Having a citizenship of America will not change even in my American passport to mention that I was born in Congo. No, that will not change. Oh, I am from Congo originally. So I am an American by naturalization. And that's what I keep even reminding even our immigrant communities, that your identity, you have to keep your identity everywhere you are. Every person will need to know, they need to know what your beliefs are and where you come from, so that they see the beauty of where you come from. For example, I think one of my colleagues touched on it about languages, different languages. You know, even as in African here in this country, we are from different places, but we speak different languages, and we have different beliefs, or we have different traditions. But that's the beauty of different races with different beauties. But again, on the other end, although we are different in some point, there's also the back side of it of thinking that that race is better than mine. No, We are all equal, and that's what we have to continually and educating our people, our community, that we are all one. Dr. Samuel said at the beginning that we are all one. We are all one. When you try, we have one color inside our bodies, one color of our blood, which is red. So we are all one. No matter where we come from, we are all one. So the only differences that are there is just the part of different countries, cultures, and ethnic, but that will not make us different. And we shouldn't actually feel that or accept that we are totally different. But we have to be, in the same time, proud of who we are and accept that another person too, or another race is also good on with their beliefs. So in my belief, in my acceptance of who I am, I think that's my responsibility as a leader to continually, as we continue also to integrate in different cultures here, we continually continue to educate our immigrant communities, our leaders, our members of our families to remember that our identity where we are matters a lot, and we have to be proud of it. Thank you.
Chichi, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Grace Paraja, for those inputs. And to round up this session, I will be posing the last question to Mr. Erasmus Ndemole Migyikra. Sir, the UN is one of the main organizations that emphasizes combating the issues associated with racism across the globe and has put forward several measures ranging from the Human Rights Conventions on racial elimination and other protocols. Do you think these measures are enough to combat racism and achieve unity and peace?
Thank you, Chichi. I think 1,000 miles begin with a step, or sometimes we say charity begins at home. So a step has been taken. The whom UN is pushing people toward that direction to not to discriminate and other things. But what I think is that the issue of racial discrimination globally need all hands on deck to find solution to it. That's why the tremendous effort of the United Nations in finding solution. Other organizations and individuals must also participate actively in creating the atmosphere for peace. Hello?
Sorry for the interruption, sir.
Hello?
I said,
Please
go ahead.
sir.
I think one of this.
Oh, okay. Good. So what I'm saying is that there must be actively participated by all, creating the atmosphere for peace and Pacific living in all parts of the world. Communities, government, and all other forms of leadership must also generate ideas and promote the concept that will eliminate racism, discrimination, and all other negative tendencies that divide people. Because the issue is that UN cannot handle it alone. You on this platform, you have a role to play. Me sitting here, I have a role to play. Governments have a role to play. NGOs have a role to play. Everyone, even our parents, our cousins, everyone has a role to play in, because this is a canker that we are trying to uproot. That's why some of you might have a historical background or historical connotation, but yet where we have reached, as I said earlier, after George Floyd, there is so many things that we have learned from the Black Lives Matter. So in this case, I'm saying that let us all combine efforts to make sure that we complement the effort of the UN to make sure that we are all safe and move freely without discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing justice to this question. Like you rightly said, all hands has to be on deck. It is our collective responsibility. We need active participation, like you said, by all, in order for us to complement the efforts of the United Nations. And so we have officially come to the end of the panel discussion, and we would like to take questions from everyone. If you have your questions, you can indicate by raising your hand, or you can type your question in the chat. And we will attend to the questions. The panelists would attend to your questions. And to take this question and answer session, I would like to call on Otumba Isaac Olofi once again, and Donatus to take the question and answer session. Otumba Isaac Olofi, kindly indicate if you are back with us, and Donatus, kindly indicate if you are here with us.
So I see Otumba Isaac there, but it looks like he's having some network issues. I see him on. So we don't have too much time. Okay. So you can, if they're not available, you can just go ahead and moderate that since you are the moderator in chief for today. There are some questions in the chat as well, so we can start with that.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobs. So I'll just go ahead. If you have any question from anyone, kindly indicate and you will be asked to unmute and ask your question.
So there's a question in the chat room. I will see if I can attempt to answer that. It says, how do you end intellectual racism? Some of us work in an environment where those who head the systems are experts, rates. They pretend to consult you on issues, but however, accept and implement your ideas probably because you are Black. What is the way forward? How do we make our voices heard at the international level? How do we convince guys that we are also have something to offer? I'm not too sure about the question, but it's talking about intellectual racism in the context of where an individual ideas are being stolen and used by other folks, or just because they are Black, they don't get to be on the table to discuss. I think it's more of an intellectual property concept, and that's primarily on the law side. But in terms of intellectual ideologies, I don't really see differentials because, believe it or not, those of us who lecture in universities, we don't care the color of your skin in the class. We lecture everyone across board. Lecture whites, Caucasians, and everyone the same way. My good friend Erasmus, when he's lecturing or when he's doing his work as a UN Child Protection Advisor, it doesn't matter the skin of the color and the intelligence. Knowledge base is such that when you are intelligent and you have knowledge, nobody can steal away. You can pretend not to recognize the knowledge base, but trust me, you cannot take away the intellectual capacity of an individual. I say this because the likes of Martin Luther King and co. in the early 60s, who would have thought that they will use their brain power to mobilize their community to overcome segregation and other stuff. We just heard my good friend Isani speaking from South Africa. You could see the intellectual level and the capacity as which she was speaking. You can't suppress it. Whatever you do, Nelson Mandela even became a lawyer from the prison. When the intellectual power is there, there's absolutely nothing you can do. It's your responsibility to ensure that you will never allow the system to keep you mute. So I think I'll leave it as such. I see a few hands on. So Titi, baby, you can take them and then we can come back to the other questions in the platform.
Okay.
All right, so I see Dr. Anki's hand up all the way from Uganda, University of, what's the name of your university again? Masaraka? Dr. Anki?
Okay, thank you very much. My question is just a little request. I'm quite a practical person. I would like to know some little practical activities you have done, maybe one or two of the panelists, to fight racism. A practical sample you have done yourself. For me, for example, I did one for knowledge racism by setting up a center for traditional medicine to integrate indigenous knowledge and contemporary knowledge to work together. So that's my activity I've done, or I'm still doing, to combat knowledge apartheid. It's a kind of racism, but the knowledge systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Jacobs-Abbey. I was having a little issue with my computer. And so I see a hand up, Albeta Holu.
No, before that, Chichi, she asked a question. I'm sure your network was breaking, so you didn't hear. Yeah. So she was asking if the panelists, any of us, is able to share any practical work that we have done, either to minimize, eradicate, or combat racism. So I believe that if the panelists will want to go ahead and possibly share one or two practical things they've done in their individual workplace or individual life to end racism. And I believe that we can also expand that to the entire group. Anybody else who also may have done something amazing to stop and end racism can also speak.
Yeah, I can see Dr. Grace.
Yes.
Yeah, to respond to the question, in my field of the practical ways I've been working on combating racism with my team is through the workshops and conferences that we organize in our organization on the African Girls Hope Foundation, and have this topic and of identity crisis, racism, and integration, assimilation, all these topics, and then we do some exercise together, and we have questionnaires that we share with them, and so that we understand where they are and how we can help them. We can help our team to combat this crisis. So whenever they go back to their local states or local cities, they are able to go back with the knowledge on how to believe in themselves. So we have been doing that every single year, and we have set up different clubs in different cities of young girls or maybe college girls, and they also organize they organize same group and invite different groups of where they live, and then they continue with discussions. So with that, it has been really helpful whenever we come together once a year, and they will bring us back information and share discussions of how their practices and how they are growing with a better understanding of how they can combat racism and identity crisis topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grace. Mr. Erasmus Ndemole, you have the floor.
Okay. I think some of us have worked in a very hard environment that has some games, sort of, that looks like racism. This thing, we've also schooled in places with the same. But what I know is that you have to prove yourself that you're a human being, you are capable, you can do what he or she, which is a racist or is discriminating, you can do better than that person. And that's what we have used. When I'm in classroom with you, I make sure that I will do my best to be one of the best. If I'm working with you, I will work hard for you to see that you cannot, and I'll organize myself so that you cannot say, hey, this guy is not capable, so you can. So sometimes if you prove to them, even if the person is racist, when he's coming to you, he's scared. And his approach to you is different. And sometimes by so doing, you start associating yourselves. And sometimes some of them forget and see you as a brother or a sister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Do we have anyone who would want to respond to that question as well? You have what are you doing within your organization or as an individual to end racism? Okay, we have Caroline Jalagat. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone in the different parts of the world. I would like to respond specifically to that aspect and how do you feel if you are in an environment where any of racism may occur or it occurs. I think it's just that own your identity, and do not let the racism aspect get into your mindset. Because if you let that in, even a simple comment will become a racism aspect. So it's just for us to be open-minded. That's how at least it has helped me in the different parts of the world that I've been. And and smile. And so you never know, you can change an aspect. And the aspect of general knowledge is very important. General knowledge on how people behave. That is appreciating the diversity. There are things you may say, there are things you may do, and it may depict differently. So it's also important that we have that out global general knowledge to help us know how we relate and how we handle certain aspects and concepts of racism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for your insights. Do we have any other person who would want to comment on that question earlier asked, or if you have activities you've been doing to pass the message across to end racism within your organization or as an individual, kindly share with us.
Okay, if we do not have any more comments on that, I would like to share.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, it's Minaya from Cameroon.
Please go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, there was a lot of discrimination in my environment, let me say in my tribe, concerning the education of the girl child. I was able to fight it by taking different people's daughters and sending to school. And when my daughter became pregnant, the father of the boy who pregnanted my daughter said she has to come out of school and marry the son because the man was our family friend. I told him my daughter must go to school. Let their son go to school. At the end, if they will love to marry themselves, they will still get married. And today, my daughter is a grade 1 teacher, a headmistress, leading a nursing school. Wow. Now, I've educated so many girls. Until now, they see that the education of the girl child, there shouldn't be discrimination, that only boys should go to school, but girls also have to be educated. The second discrimination was when a man loses the wife, the man is well treated. But if the wife loses the husband, the woman will receive a lot of maltreatment. She will not sit on the bed, she will sit on the ground. She will not lie on the bed, she will always lie on the floor. And I fought until I ended it that everybody should be treated equally. If you lost your husband, your friends are not supposed to torment you as if you are the one that killed your husband. That is nature. Everybody has to die. And the woman must not suffer because
the husband has died.
The husband has died. So it is ended. When a man dies, the woman sits on the chair. She dresses well. She sleeps on her bed. She's no more treated as in the past. So if I want to continue, there are so many aspects that are fought in racism. In the past, women in my tribe could not enter a meeting house with men. A woman was not supposed to speak among men. But we have fought with a group of my friends. And today, we have women everywhere. We have women counselors. We have women in the community meetings. We have women everywhere. Now women mix with men and they carry out activities together. So I want to end up by saying that wherever you are, don't minimize yourself to say that you are small, you are poor, or you are weak, or you are not educated. I am not well educated, but the things I have done in my community, some women who are educated have not done anything. If I die today, I am proud of what I have done in my community. Because up to date, I'm still sponsoring children in school. I'm still sponsoring the education of the girl child because I know that what a man can do, a woman can do it 10 times better than even the man. Thank you very much.
Wow. Wow. I am tearing because I thought this was a very, very powerful intervention from you, especially your last statement saying that what a man can do, a woman can do 1 million times. I agree with you 100%. And I believe that you've touched on a very important area of the subject matter, where when we end all forms of racism, as I had mentioned earlier on, that most of the time, the concept of racism is all about skin and color. But what you just alluded to, the role that even culture plays in promoting racism and discrimination among ourselves is very critical. So thank you for sharing this experience with us. Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the wonderful work you're doing when it comes to fighting for the rights of female child. And thank you, Ambassador Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey, for your response on that experience sharing. And so if we do not have any more comments with regards to what we are doing within our communities and as individuals to speak up against racism, I would like to briefly share my own contribution as a development practitioner and founder.
Wait, before you step forward, there is a question from, I think there are 2 questions in the chat room. So maybe let's take that and then you wrap up with your with yours. So I see a question from Barbara Peace-Atibole, our own Mamaga, the paramount queen of Alavanyo traditional area in Ghana. She asked a question. If the workshop and co is being organized for institutions, how will those have not been part of any institution or companies understand what is going on in this aspect of area for change? So the question again says that if the workshops and co is only being organized for institutions, how will those who are not part of these institutions be able to be impacted by these circumstances? Mamaga, I would say that, see, just as Erasmus mentioned, sometimes we don't need a mass or a larger group of people to make an impact. Again, we just saw or we just heard from our mom from Cameroon expressing the fact that she single-handedly put a lot of people in school to the point that she's so proud of herself today that if God calls her home today, she will walk majestically to say that I contributed my quota to change societal perception about girls and women in my community. So I believe that we can individually make a huge difference in our communities and in our societies without necessarily attending a huge event. The mindset and orientation for me is the most practical approach towards curbing some of these challenges. If we make a conscious effort, like Ma said, she made a conscious effort that she was going to ensure that her daughter go back to school and the son-in-law go back to school. And today, because of that effort and push, she is heading a school, she is a nurse, and she's teaching and imparting lives of other people. So I believe that we don't necessarily need a larger workshops and group of people, but each individual within our community, we need to reorient ourselves, pass the message on, and like this platform, as we have gathered, the outcome of this meeting should not end only with us, but we should share with our friends what we just learned and make an impact. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The other question here, that probably that will be our last question because of the time. It says that my question is, can discrimination and racism be eliminated in the community with pre-mindset? Like, for instance, some tribes in my country are always regarded as foreigners because those tribes who discriminate against them have a pre-mindset about them of being foreigners, even if they were among the indigenous tribes of the country. I don't know if anyone want to respond to that. Dear Dr. Grace.
Yeah, I read a little bit about the question, and let me say where I come from. My tribe is the smallest tribe in Congo, and we are the minorities, I believe, among the minorities tribe. And there's no way, like I said before, you have to be proud of who you are to fight racism. If you are not strong enough to believe or to trust yourself or to stand on what you know for sure, that's who you are, then other tribes or other communities will take advantage of that and oppress you. So as a former refugee or a former immigrant, I'm one of those people that experience ethnic fights in my country, and they fought our tribe so much. To date, it's still happening, but it does not mean that I do not belong to that community. Oh, there's no way the problem will end, but again, there's no way some people will ever understand that these ethnic issues must end. No, but racism, it's a day-to-day crisis that we have to accept, to live with it and fight against it by becoming strong and believing in yourself of who you are. And I believe that way everyone will be able to advocate for them, for their communities.
Thank you very much. Anyone want to chip in to that discussion? Ken, I see your hand up. Ken. Okay, so I think he can hear us. Conan, your hand is up. You want to speak, Conan? Okay, so I think we can hear him. So Chichi, yes, you can pick it up and then we can wrap it up.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Grace Faraja, for this insight, and a very big thank you to Ambassador Jacobs-Abbey for taking on the questions in the chats for us and for your responses, which has been quite insightful. And I'll just quickly, briefly talk about what I do in my organization as a peace-trained advocate for peace. I do train people on peace education within my community. I train women within the community, teaching them about peace education, and also during the just celebrated International Day of Peace on September 21st on Wednesday. I went to schools with my volunteers within my organization, and we conducted peace education. We had fun with the children. We also had art competition and quiz competition centered around the topic peace and racism, ending racism. So we got to see how these children get to learn about being peaceful, showing peace, even though we know that in Nigeria, we don't really experience racism as such. What we experience more is ethnic discrimination because of the different tribes we have. And so we see all these things, this level of discrimination coming up, even amongst children. And as our keynote speaker rightly said during the panel discussion, he said that what you put into the minds of these children is what they are going to end up living with and believing with. So it's very important that even at that level, while they are still children, it is important for us to pass across the right message to them so that they can embrace each other and love one another, show compassion, and stop bullying each other, because it starts from there. When they begin to see each other's when they are being antagonistic against each other, they don't appreciate each other at that level that they are still children. You can imagine what will become of them when they grow up. And that is why we have so many tribal conflicts amongst us. And so that's one of the ways in which I am able to step down these peace education trainings within communities around me. And very soon we'll also be having a discussion around youths in Africa concerning peace building. So on this note, I think we will quickly take a parting shot from our panelists. And I would be starting with Dr. Grace Faraja to quickly give us a parting shot in light of the challenges currently experienced due to racism and discrimination in the society. What do you think are the way forward towards achieving global peace? Just in 1 minute, parting shot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chichi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chichi. Well done with leading us in this discussion. God bless you. So the way forward for me is that as a leader, let's not keep quiet. Let's break the silence in all the areas of our professionals, our communities, and speak about this topic, share about it, and discuss the solutions too, so that the more we educate our people and the better we are bringing change, and we are giving strengthening our youth, our communities, and our member of our community that are surrounding us. So breaking the silence, discuss about this topic, and that will be the way forward for us to bring change and in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grace. And Mr. Migyikra Erasmus, please, can we have a parting shot from you? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I'm grateful. I think I've seen my grandmother that I don't know. I'm from the same village there. I'm greeting you, madam. My peace, mine is peace begins with you. So let us all embrace peace. Let's be ambassadors of peace and be concerned about the stability of other parts of the world. We must also say no to racism and discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Ms. Ntombi Zodwa is no longer with us. She sent an apology to the chat that she will be leaving. I would call on Ambassador Dr. Samuel Jacobs-Abbey to give us his parting shot.
Yes, thank you very much. And I want to remind each and every one that we have a responsibility to ensure that we contribute towards the cause of stopping racism and building peace. We can do that individually in our small place, and the impact will be big. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And this brings us to the end of this laudable event put together by the Jacobs-Abbey Global Institute for Leadership Studies and other partners. And our key takeaways for today has been quite enormous. And you would agree with me that our expert panelist has been able to enlighten us more about the issues around racism, taking the cue from the situation in South Africa. It's been quite insightful. And the key message that we're taking away today is that let's not keep silent. Let's break the barriers, and let us be the peace and be the change that we want to see. So I would like everyone to unmute themselves and let's all together say, I am the peace that we want to see. I am the peace.
I am the peace.
I am the peace.
I am the peace that we want to see. I am the peace that we want to see.
I am the peace that we want to see.
I am the peace that we want to see.
I am the peace that we want to see.
Yeah. Thank you very much, because it is one thing for us to say it and is another thing for us to take action. So I would like to encourage us, as our panelist has already stated, that it is a collective responsibility. So as we all go home today, let's have it at the back of our mind that we would keep doing what we can in our various spaces to ensure that we promote the culture of peace. And to finally wrap up this session today, we will be having the vote of thanks given by Pastor Mike Adetong. If Pastor Mike Adetong is here with us, please give us the vote of thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening from Nigeria. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, wow. What a great day it has been. It's been very impactful, very insightful. And on that note, I want to say a very big thank you first to Jagils and the partners for putting this together, and the Inspirers Alumni Network. And I want to say a very big thank you to our keynote speaker, Barrister Erasmus, and the panelists. It's been a great delivery. Like we have been told, the takeaway from here is that we should strive to be the peace that we want to see in the world. And I believe every one of us will work towards being that. So once again, I want to say thank you very much. And may we, as individuals and our world, continue to experience peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Mike. And finally, thank you everyone for gracing this occasion today. Appreciations to everyone who was taking up time to join us, and we are very grateful with the Alumni Inspirers Network and the entire Jagils family. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you, Chichi. Thank you, everyone. It's indeed a pleasure to have all of you, and everyone could agree with me that Margaret Chichi Nkere is an astute moderator. She has managed this program very well. And that is one of the things that I pride myself with, to be able to tap into individuals' talent and promote them to do what God has given them to do and do it best. So Chichi, we are so grateful for stepping up and making this possible. Once again, even though Pastor Mike have thanked everyone, I seriously want to thank my friend Erasmus all the way in Kenya, but I think recently he just visited Ghana. He's in the middle of putting in-law or somebody to sleep, in having a funeral, but because this is an important event, he still find time to be with us, and I am very grateful for his time, and I really want to thank every one of you for coming, and it's indeed a pleasure. Have a blessed afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you find yourself, and it's good to see all of you once again. I look forward to seeing those of you who will be in Washington, D.C. in November for a good time. And otherwise, God willing, next year we are bringing Jagils to Africa. And so God will bring all of us together again. Have a blessed day and stay blessed. Thank you and bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.